Now, chips are part of the main drivers of Korea's exports, and that being said, in this next report, our business correspondent Lee Soo-jin takes a look at how chip makers here.
The Dutch government has announced new export restrictions on microchip technology sales, citing security concerns.
The Dutch government has announced new export restrictions on microchip technology sales, citing security concerns. Now, chips are part of the main drivers of Korea's exports, and that being said, in this next report, our business correspondent takes a look at how chipmakers here. On the one hand is the United States. It's a longtime ally, a country that shares nuclear weapons with the Dutch. On the other hand is ASML in the world, and will be announcing various very large companies, the biggest, actually, and they'll be coming back, having to do with chips. In a quiet corner of Europe, the Netherlands just made a move that has stunned Washington and left Brussels scrambling. It wasn't a protest, a speech, or even a tweet. It was a single calculated action that sent ripples through tech industries, energy markets, and global alliances alike. This wasn't just a trade hiccup or a political jab, it was something far more strategic and far more revealing. While some are calling it bold, others are calling it a wake-up call. And tucked inside this international twist is one detail so critical it might just change the future of innovation itself. So what exactly did the Netherlands do, and why did it catch everyone off guard? Let's unravel the move that's got the world talking. The Netherlands' alleged sudden move to slam the brakes on ASML's exports shook the global tech and economic scene. ASML, the Dutch crown jewel and the world's only supplier of advanced extreme ultraviolet (EUV) lithography machines, plays a critical role in semiconductor manufacturing. These machines are essential for producing cutting-edge chips used in everything from smartphones to military hardware. By cutting off access to this technology, the Netherlands didn't just disrupt a supply chain, they flipped the table on global expectations around tech cooperation and trade. According to reports, this decision was triggered by a partial revocation of export licenses by the Dutch government, an action reportedly influenced by pressure from the Biden administration. The original shipment, intended for customers in China, was blocked just before it left port, signaling how tightly export control is now entangled with global politics. The move took even the United States by surprise. While Washington had long been used to a constant flow of cutting-edge technology from allies, it now had to confront a glaring hole in its semiconductor strategy. U.S. innovation had depended heavily on ASML equipment, and its sudden absence poses significant threats to national security and economic stability. The Netherlands, traditionally viewed as a trusty and cooperative ally, has made it abundantly clear that even trusted allies might take bold, uncooperative actions when national interest is at stake. The shock reverberated far beyond U.S. borders. It rattled the European Union. The EU, a bastion of collaboration with economic policies and internal solidarity, has been put into disarray by this unilateral act of the Netherlands. Such disruptions called into question the internal assumption that trade and technology flows will remain uninterrupted among EU member states. The Dutch decision starkly reminded everyone that technological assets have now become strategic weapons, and in a fast-changing geopolitical landscape, these may be weaponized by even those countries with a history of free trade. Beyond short-term political ramifications, the halt in exports triggered long-term economic consequences. Key industries like electric vehicles, consumer electronics, and energy infrastructure suddenly found themselves at the mercy of supply chain uncertainty. ASML machines do not merely build chips but also inject innovation into other sectors. Their absence created a vacuum that sparked the whole world into a fast-paced reconfiguration of the semiconductor supply chain and production strategies. The Netherlands had spoken, and the world had better listen. Netherlands strategic flexing. Behind the headlines, the Netherlands was playing a far deeper strategic hand. For decades, the country was known for its open trade policies and strong ties with Western allies. But by unilaterally halting exports of its most advanced semiconductor manufacturing machines, the Dutch government made a bold statement: technological superiority isn't just an asset, it's leverage. In a world where microchips are the currency of global innovation, the Netherlands flipped the script and turned its crown jewel, ASML, into a strategic tool of national influence. The export halt, which ASML said was due to a change in licensing, was reportedly linked to U.S. efforts to tighten control over tech transfers to China. This context reveals a deeper game. The Netherlands wasn't just flexing on its own, it was navigating intense geopolitical pressure while asserting its own influence. This was a definite, calculated flex. The whole move was within a long-term vision framework. ASML reached the top with a strong reputation based on years of innovation, R&D, and public-private investment. The Dutch government realized that ownership of this truly critical piece of global semiconductor infrastructure afforded it an outsized voice on the world stage. By tightening control over ASML's exports, the Netherlands took control of its own destiny, sending the signal to both allies and rivals that it would no longer tolerate being a passive participant in global tech politics. What rattled the whole framework was that it was exceptionally unexpected. Even the EU found itself grasping at straws. Brussels, where harmony among states is usually an expectation, found itself unable to suppress the Netherlands from breaking ranks and asserting its right to sovereignty. The act revealed cracks in the initial assumption that economic interests will always trump national interest. Such was the conspicuous case of the Netherlands, exhibiting that in a technologically charged geopolitical climate, countries prefer control, resilience, and leverage in a way that could disrupt long-standing alliances. The Netherlands was making the point that it is not just about economic development, but rather national leverage in controlling advanced technology for semiconductor manufacturing. The ability to deny access to next-gen chip manufacturing equipment put the Dutch in a position to exert some influence that went beyond the boardroom and into the circles of international backchannel politics. It set a precedent for how smaller nations with critical technologies can stand head-to-head with superpowers. The Netherlands just gave a lesson on how to play hardball in a world where innovation has become the new battlefield. Sovereignty over semiconductors. We've officially entered a new era of tech sovereignty, one where owning, controlling, or even just regulating the tools that enable semiconductor manufacturing is equivalent to holding strategic power. The Netherlands, through its decision to hold ASML exports, didn't just disrupt an industry, it redefined the rules of engagement in global technology politics. Semiconductors, once viewed as technical marvels and circuit boards, are now being seen as the geopolitical currency of our time. This moment has highlighted a seismic shift. Access to the means of innovation is no longer guaranteed by partnership, alliance, or international goodwill, it is dictated by national strategy. The Dutch government recognized that ASML's machines aren't merely instruments of production, they are levers of influence. In doing so, they asserted that the country's control over this critical node in the supply chain is non-negotiable, even if that means ruffling feathers in Brussels or Washington. This new reality is prompting countries around the world to reassess their semiconductor strategies. The question is no longer how can we cooperate, but rather how can we control what we need to thrive. The scramble is on. From the US to South Korea, from Japan to Germany, nations are racing to localize chip production, secure critical technologies, and reduce exposure to strategic choke points. Ultimately, the Netherlands' move may be looked back on not just as a turning point, but as a moment of awakening, a reminder that in a digitized, interconnected world, power doesn't always rest in weapons or borders. Sometimes, it's in a machine the size of a van, housed in a clean room in Hoven, that holds keys to the future. In a world where the lines between commerce, politics, and security are rapidly fading, the Dutch decision was a signal flare. It declared that sovereignty in the age of silicon isn't just about territory, it's about technology. And the race to control it has only just begun. Strategic choke points, the new front lines. In classical geopolitics, choke points were narrow straits or canals, like the Suez or the Strait of Hormuz, whose control could decide the fate of nations. Today, those choke points have morphed into technological monopolies, a single firm, a single machine, a single process that only a handful understand or can replicate. ASML's EUV machines are the Panama Canal of the digital world, highly specialized, incredibly complex, and irreplaceable in the short term. What makes this even more striking is how quietly this dominance was built. While tech giants like Apple and Google were grabbing headlines, ASML was quietly refining a technology so advanced that it borders on science fiction, bouncing light through mirrors in a vacuum to etch microscopic patterns onto silicon wafers. And now, the rest of the world is waking up to what that actually means. Whoever controls this tech doesn't just make chips, they set the pace of progress. The ASML moment is part of a broader revelation. Our globalized supply chains, long praised for their efficiency, are shockingly fragile. A single export restriction from a single country can ripple through the entire system. When the Netherlands limited exports, it wasn't just China that felt the burn. Companies across Europe, the US, and Asia began reassessing their exposure. Suddenly, just in time has been replaced with just in case.